Good evening, everybody. Since we're all here, I figure we might as well get this meeting going prior to 7:30, like I said. So at this point, I'm going to call together the regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors of King George County. Um, And to start off, we're going to have Mr. Granger with the invocation.
Lord, we just come before you. We thank you for the freedoms we enjoy. We thank you for the blessings you've given us.
Thank you, everyone. Moving on, Mr. Miller, any amendments to the agenda tonight?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'm going to open the floor up for public comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. If comments relate to a specific public hearing item, we ask that you offer those comments at the time of the public hearing. Would anyone like to come up for public comment? Mr. Simonoff, come right up, sir. And when you start, you can just state your name and address, sir.
Test one. Okay, here we go. Adam Simonoff, 5340 Gordon Drive, King George, Virginia. Here's my public comment. The Ralph Bunche High School was built by the injustice of segregation, closed by the justice of integration. The county and the school's alumni association previously expressed a unified desire to repurpose this historic landmark as a civil rights museum and Performing Arts Center in honor of all its alumni who studied science, technology, engineering, math, and the arts. I therefore request the Board of Supervisors move to issue a public letter of intent to repurpose the school as a civil rights museum and performing arts center as it did in the past. Anything less would be a slap in the face to the community. I further request the county set a date and make a I further request the county set a date and make public the approved architectural plans and all cost estimates for the repurposed school's opening day to the public with a strategy to operate the property by county staff or professional contractor support. These actions honor the school, advance tourism, and give both the county and the public the opportunity to fundraise and donate restoration funds to the county without raising our taxes. If Colonial Beach, Virginia, under the same state laws, can invite public participation in their public works project and inscribe donors' names on their public fishing pier bricks, then why can't King George raise funds the same way for the Ralph Bunche High School? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simonoff. Anyone else? Mr. Bushrod.
Good evening, Wayne Bushrod, 10144 Deer Lane. Good evening, Chairman Stonehill, members of the board. I stand before you today representing the King George branch NAACP, and we want to reiterate that we're continuing the push to move the Confederate statue that still sits in front of our county courthouse to a more appropriate location. The board held a public hearing on November 23rd, 2021, and voted unanimously to move the statue. Here we sit on March 1st, 2022, and a contract still has not been awarded for the removal of and relocation. We have been dealing with this particular issue for almost 2 years. Why is this project taking so long to complete? We ask the board to gain, not lose any more momentum and get this project completed. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Yeah, hi, I'm Chris Payton. I represent the Thurman Brisbane Center, which receives money from King George County. Okay. There are a lot of misconceptions about homelessness, and I would just like to read a little vignette about one family that passed through our shelter last year. We provide shelter and services for men, women, and children experiencing homelessness. And I'm here with my colleague, Alice Stanton, who's been at King George since 16-something, I think. Doug, Elise, and their 4 children were doing pretty well 7 years ago. Childhood sweethearts from King George. They were renting a house on the water in Colonial Beach, where Doug worked as a waterman and Elise as a housekeeper. They had no car, but everything was within walking or biking distance. All that suddenly changed when their house was foreclosed on and they were given 15 days to leave. With no recourse, they gathered their belongings and moved into a hotel in Stafford, near where Doug found work as a heavy equipment operator for $14 an hour. Their plan was to stay there only until they found another rental unit, but the $485 weekly rate and lack of a kitchen made it nearly impossible to save enough for a down payment and first month's rent. It was not a good situation, with 2 beds and 4 children, one of them with special needs, entirely deaf. 2 of them always slept on the floor. A microwave, tiny refrigerator, and hot plate comprised their kitchen. Due to occupancy ordinances, they had to move out every 28 days for at least 48 hours. Sometimes they all slept on the floor of Elise's grandmother's assisted living unit, which put her residency at risk. The hotel grounds were never altogether safe. Almost as bad was the stigma. People assumed Doug and Elise were involved in illicit activities when they were just trying to hold their family together. For 7 years, they lived like this. When COVID hit, Doug lost his job. Relief funding brought them some time, but they were ineligible for eviction prevention funding because it did not cover short-term occupancies. Faced with unsheltered homelessness, Doug and Elise swallowed their pride and entered the Brisbane Center. It took a week or 2 for the constant stresses of survival mode to begin to relax. Food and shelter were now a given. One of the children burst into tears at seeing she would have her own bed. For the first time in recent memories, the parents could clear-headedly take stock of their circumstances and plan steps toward resolving them. Now enrolled in Medicaid, they made long overdue doctor's appointments. They applied for food stamps to assist them post-shelter. Doug is shopping a new resume around, and Elise is in classes for nursing. They'll tell you that the Brisbane Center has been like family. They participate in chores, prepare meals, share laughs over Friday night movies. And their advice for others is this: dig deep within yourselves for the desire to overcome your hardships. No one can do it but you, but there are miracles around the corner that you can't even imagine. And for the folks we serve, we thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Welcome, Mr. Hunsinger.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the board, I am Brent Hunsinger with Friends of the Rappahannock. I'm here to speak with you tonight about Senate Bill 537. This bill provides for the increased authority of local government to address the loss of tree canopy during the development process, both replacement via tree planting and conservation of existing canopy. The bill is a local option and does not mandate localities to adopt tree ordinances. This bill is a product of months of intense negotiations between many stakeholders, including conservation groups, VACO, the home builders and development industry, the commercial real estate sector, the agricultural community, and others. The bill is complex, but at its core, it does the following. Number one, it expands to all localities provisions that currently only allow certain localities to adopt an ordinance providing for the planting and replacement of trees during the development process. Number two, it adds more flexibility for implementation and management of tree canopy banks, credits, and tree canopy requirements. These will assist in meeting tree canopy goals, including planting and maintaining trees on public and private property and advancing pollution reduction, stormwater management, flood mitigation, and other conservation goals. It allows for larger tree canopies to be required when development occurs on forested and other environmentally sensitive areas, or when a locality agrees to a somewhat reduced local parking lot, setbacks, and similar requirements. It also requires the state forester to convene a work group at the state level to adopt standards that can be used by localities in determining how to achieve tree canopy percentages. I am asking King George County to please consider voicing your support for Senate Bill 537, which is up for consideration in the House of Delegates, Cities, Counties, and Towns, Subcommittee Number 2 on Thursday morning at 7:30 a.m. The county has benefited from and expressed interest in tree giveaways and plantings. This bill would help provide resources to continue these types of programming and help the county address tree canopy loss as increased development occurs. Thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to continuing to work with the county in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Hunsinger. Anyone else for public comment? Mr. Dines, anyone online or on the phone? Board members, anybody have any correspondence? Mrs. Kupka.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe we all are in receipt of an email today from Mrs. D. Strauss, and she requested that I read it during public comment. Dear board members, D. Strauss, 10362 Ridgeway Drive, King George. I would like to share with you my public comment in regards to the THC resolution to be presented by Sheriff Giles at tonight's meeting. On June 4, 2019, I spoke at public comment to the Board of Supervisors about my concerns in regards to a new business that had opened in the King's Pizza Shopping Plaza and the harm that the products being sold could do to our youth. I stated the harm and gave links to information I had found online about the inhalants and other items this new business sold. To quote my previous statement, quote, this was a vape shop, a jewel store, a hookah supplier, a promoter of whippets, and seller of kratom and CBD and something about tobacco. Not good stuff. I won't go into all of the CBD material I have read. Just let me say, in my opinion, a drug is a drug. I am guessing that this business applied for his business license under the guise of a tobacco store. Like all the 10 or so others that populate our county's 301 corridor. Where are all of these other products on his application to be approved in accordance with our zoning laws? Are there zoning restrictions or guidance in place to regulate these types of products? End quote. I highly encourage this board to adopt this THC resolution to condemn the sale of synthetic cannabinoid products in our county, quote, and support every effort to pass and enforce federal, state, and local laws banning the sale of synthetic cannabinoids as they contain federal and state Schedule I controlled substances, lack quality control standards, can have detrimental effects upon one's health, and are marketed to purposely appeal to underage users, end quote. Thank you. D. Strauss.
Thank you, Mrs. Kupka.
I will try to shorten my board report up because we have a family out here that's waiting. Oh, sorry. Apologize.
I thought you had a comment. So.
No, I didn't. I thought you were giving me a heads up to start my public comment. Sorry about that.
Okay, so if there's no more public comment and nothing else to be read, I will close public comment and start with, go to reports of members of the board, but we're going to start here in the middle with Mrs. Kupka.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your indulgence. So I will finish the rest of my report after, but we do have a group here in the audience that we would like to accommodate first. So we are going to go ahead and do that. I have a member commendation to bring forward. Supervisor Bender and I would like to present a memorial commendation to the family and friends of Elizabeth Lee, King George County historian, who passed away in October. Ms. Bender will read the commendation aloud. She and I have both signed it as it is a member commendation. And then I would appreciate the board and the audience's indulgence upon reading of the commendation if we would stand for a moment of silence in honor of Mrs. Lee. Thank you.
All right. Whereas Elizabeth Nicholas Lee, distinguished historian of King George County, died on October 8th, 2021, and whereas Elizabeth Lee was born in North Carolina and moved to King George County at a very young age, and graduated from King George High School and the University of Mary Washington, and retired in 1994 from the Naval Surface Warfare Center after a long career as an accomplished physicist. And whereas in 1987, Elizabeth Lee, a woman of strong faith and achievement, justly proud of her county's rich and diverse history, was instrumental in the establishment of the King George County Historical Society, located in the old jail at King George Courthouse, where she provided untiring service in the preservation of county history. And whereas Elizabeth Lee served as president of the King George County Historical Society, was co-creator of its museum, and enriched the lives of researchers, genealogists, scholars, and historians, routinely delving into the rich collections of rare books and photographs, magazines, Bible records, church records, and cemetery records. And whereas Elizabeth Lee was a member of the, and I might butcher this and I apologize, Potomac, you know what I'm talking about? Patawomeck Indian Tribe of Virginia, past member of the Virginia Genealogy Society Board of Directors, past president and member of the Friends of the Virginia State Archives Board of Directors, and past member of the Central Rappahannock Heritage Center Board of Directors. And whereas Elizabeth Lee compiled and published books about King George County and articles published in the Virginia Genealogical Society magazine and the Northern Neck of Virginia Magazine of History. And whereas in 2006, Elizabeth Lee co-authored the widely received book, King George County, A Pictorial History, which chronicles the county's history. And whereas in 2019, Elizabeth Lee published The Last Hope, Lies, Truths, and Legends of John Wilkes Booth's 34-hour escape through King George County, Virginia, which shed new light on how Booth made his way through King George County to Garrett's Barn in Caroline County. And whereas Elizabeth Lee's historical accomplishments provided the foundation that led to the enjoyment of our county's 300th anniversary celebration in 2020, and whereas Elizabeth Lee served on the history team of Shiloh Baptist Church, where she was instrumental in preserving church historical records for archival purposes at the Virginia Baptist Historical Society, University of Richmond. And therefore, be it resolved that we, the citizens of King George County, recognize Elizabeth Lee's achievements and contributions to the preservation of King George County history, and are grateful for Elizabeth Lee's dedicated service and determined commitment to King George County history, and that a copy of this commendation be presented to the family of Elizabeth Lee, presented this first day of March 2022.
Thank you. If you all stand for a moment of silence, please. Okay, thank you, everyone.
And Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, we would like family members and friends, anyone who wishes to come forward, to please do so we could formally present you with the memorial commendation. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to go ahead and finish my report. On Sunday, February 20th, the House Appropriations Committee and the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee advanced their budget bills out of committee. I am pleased to report that both money committees reported the $16 million in ARPA wastewater improvements contained in former Governor Northam's original budget. These funds would allow us to address the decommissioning of Perkins Corner and Oakland Park wastewater treatment plants, both of which are necessary as we will be unable to meet the reliability standards in the DEQ superseding consent order, as well as future capacity upgrades and improvements to Dahlgren Hop Yard and Fairview Beach wastewater treatment plants and inflow and infiltration projects without taking on new debt by the authority. So the copy that I provided all members that I marked up in blue and green ink is actually from the floor votes by the House and the Senate, the full floor on, Thursday, February 24th. They had additional budget amendments, and you'll see in the markup that none of King George County Service Authority's money was reduced or eliminated. So those amounts still stand in the state budget. I did confirm that with Senator Stewart today, that our money for the Service Authority is still in the state budget. And now the House bill needs to go to the Senate to be approved for their version. And then the Senate bill needs to go to the House to have their version approved. But that's good news coming out of Richmond that as of right now, we're still on track with that money. So I wanted to share that with you all. Another state item, and I shared this with all of you, the budget amendment with regard to the suitability study of Dahlgren Railroad Heritage Trail was reported by the House Appropriations Committee, and there is a copy of that for you all as well. So that is moving forward. Tuesday, February 22nd, I attended the first county budget work session. Want to thank staff for your work on crafting the budget process and looking forward to more budget discussions. Saturday, February 26th, I participated in the Friends of the Rappahannock cleanup at Waterloo Farm. Thanks to everyone who came out and helped. Monday, February 28th, I attended the GWRC meeting. The Regional Resilience Plan was tabled indefinitely. So it will be up to individual localities to develop their own resilience plans. I want to congratulate Dahlgren Half Marathon participants who competed and the volunteers who supported their event last weekend. A reminder, fire safety. I know I mentioned this at the last meeting about the burn ban, that it took effect on February 15th. However, I am seeing many calls for illegal burns on active 911. So I just want to remind the community again that there is a burn ban in effect. And last but not least, I want to thank everyone for coming out for public comment tonight. Mr. Simonoff, thank you very much for your comments about Ralph Bunche High School. So we are preparing an RFP for the roof for that $500,000 National Park Service grant we received. So we're working on that. We have a letter of intent in for another grant opportunity that I brought to the board to possibly replace the electrical service. So we're waiting to hear if we get selected for a full application on that. And we are awaiting the updated study, which I believe Mr. Miller updated us about at the last meeting, on the Ralph Bunche High School, the old King George Middle School, and the courthouse. So right now, we, the county proper, are taking steps to do the due diligence that we need to do a proper assessment of the building. And we are actively pursuing grant funds and other resources to try to shore up the building to mitigate future damage as best as we can. I personally am very proud of the role that I have taken in bringing these opportunities to the attention of our board and the attention that I have tried to bring to the building. So for right now, I just don't feel that we're at the point of needing a letter of intent to issue a letter of intent. We're just not quite there yet. But I do want to reiterate the fact that we are definitely working towards a goal of doing something with the building. So thank you for your comment. Mr. Bushrod, my understanding is that there was some more legal work that Ms. Lackey reported she was working on for us with regard to the Confederate Memorial. So I'm sure going forward, you'll see something on that. Mr. Payton has left. Thank you to him for coming out and commenting about Thurman Brisbane. And Mr. Hunsinger, I see you are still here, and thanks for organizing the cleanup on Saturday. And I believe that Mr. Stonehill is going to address the remainder of your comment that you brought to us tonight during his board report. So thanks very much, and thank you to Mrs. Strauss for submitting her comment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Since we're over here, Mr. Collins.
Mr. Chairman, I'll yield last.
Okay. Mrs. Minder.
I would like to thank everyone who spoke tonight. First off, I virtually attended the monthly Dahlgren Heritage Museum monthly meeting. Their new approach to museums in a virtual world is moving forward. The museum looks forward to bring back their lecture series in some manner this summer, and they are still facing the challenge of a lack of visitors due to the bridge construction and look forward to its completion. But they also want to mention that those that are working on the bridge have been very helpful and mindful of the museum and helping them out and taking care that the grounds and the artifacts and stuff around are taken care of. I attended the first of our budget work sessions last Wednesday. This was just our kickoff meeting, and tomorrow we will start to get into the budget in depth. A lot of hard choices will need to be made while balancing the needs of the citizens, young and old, and the county as a whole. On Monday, I completed a FOIA training with our county attorney, Ms. Lackey, and I enjoyed getting a different perspective this time and felt it was well done and thorough. So thank you, Ms. Lackey, for providing that. Later that evening, I attended the GWRC and FAMPO meetings. I want to thank GWRC staff and the Berkeley Group for creating a template and for a resilience plan that each locality can base theirs off of. During the FAMPO meeting, it was mentioned from the director of FAMPO about in the president's infrastructure bill that they're encouraging communities that they concentrate on a transit-based and multimodal when designing communities, and communities are encouraged to develop a housing coordination plan and long-range planning with housing consultants. And they are also planning on holding a summit to address the challenges to move freight in this region. I also attended the monthly Healthy Generations meeting where I was surprised to find out that they are seeking a grant to help address the need of all of our communities in Planning District 16 about what I had mentioned at the beginning when we had the residents who had lack of power. So they're looking for a grant to help provide that to people that maybe seek to be on a list that during a disaster or a power outage might have a checkup call. And the last, we already did the resolution. Originally, I met Elizabeth Lee about 2015 when I was looking for yearbooks to scan, and then my little project of getting all the yearbooks together to scan for King George High School and Ralph Bunch. And I consider her my friend. I enjoyed visiting them a lot of Thursdays just to say hi to herself, Bobby, and Jean Graham, who was here. And a lot of times I went to just listen to them because it was very nice to hear their stories about King George and their recollections about all manners. But I want to bring up two things that I'll still always remember. And one is my last memory of Elizabeth was coming to the farmer's market while I was running for office. She came up to say hi to get a sign from me, and she was having trouble putting it in the wheelchair, but she was so proud of just being named to the tribe of the Indian tribe that's, has their headquarters in Stafford. And she was so honored to finally get her designation as a member of the tribe, and she was so proud of that. And it still warms my heart to remember her just going around beaming that she got that. And the last but not least, we mentioned genealogy in the resolution, and I wish her family was still here to hear this. But one of the things I remember is how much passionate she was about genealogy. Somebody came into the Historical Society on Thursday and said, "Can you help me?" She opened up that computer and she was ready to go about they're helping somebody do research. And one of the ones I remember that says a lot about Elizabeth is this couple came in, and it was a brother and sister. They were older, and they were coming to do a wish for their mother who had just passed away. And she wanted to find the grave they wanted to find the grave of their infant sibling that had passed away when they lived in King George, and she helped them find the grave, and they honored the wishes of their mother to put a grave marker on the gravesite of their infant sibling. So those are the things Elizabeth did, and she meant a lot to the community in preserving the history of King George. And that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Granger.
Yes, sir. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who came out to give comment, to express recommendations and concerns. I don't really have anything beyond what Ms. Kupka had to share, so I won't belabor those points any further. On Thursday, March 17th, I did have the opportunity, I was invited by Mr. Chris Smith from the Hop Yard HOA to come out and discuss any and all things that Hop Yard might be interested in. The big thing that they were discussing was in their new section, the fact that they don't currently have any street lamps and what the process would be to go about having lights or lamps installed in that section. So we discussed that at some length. Tuesday, March 22nd, I also attended the organizational budget work session. I'd like to say thank you to staff for preparing that and then just helping us through this whole process and preparing us for this next meeting starting tomorrow. So I'm sure that'll be a fun one as well. So thank you, staff, for all that you do to make the budget work session go smoothly. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Collins.
Thanks to everyone who came out this evening. I, being new to the board, I've taken copious notes in regards to this and these items, and also have been following along for about 8 years now. I'd like to take my time during the board comments to comment in regards to the service authorities and the Board of Supervisors' lack of transparency to the board members and to the public. Since taking office in January 1st, 2022, I, board member T.C. Collins, am aware of communications to several Board of Supervisors members to each other and to the county administrator, and only to service authority members and some Board of Supervisors. The information is not being shared to every board member, and I'm being one of them. Recently, there was a dumping of sewage in the Machota Creek. I was not advised until I read it in the newspaper. Also, Perkins Corner has been shut down, and sewage is being hauled away to Dahlgren with a high price tag associated with this activity. When I asked my appointed member, Carrie Cleveland, the member of the service authority, she was unaware of these instances each time I called. The service authority had been in several closed meetings since January. In the last meeting, the agenda was changed to include discussion of merging the service authority with the county. After yet another closed meeting and brief discussion, they voted to have a meeting with the Board of Supervisors in regards to a merger. There had been no previous discussion in public in regards to this merger. I was invited to a meeting along with another supervisor, the county attorney, the HR director, and the county administrator, and a representative from the county's financial advisor. This meeting was not open to the public, and this is not transparency. 2 members of the Board of Supervisors are members of the service authority, and this is a conflict of interest, especially since both are not customers of the service authority and have publicly stated that they have wells and do not want the county to absorb the service authority's debt. That will be left to the customers along with future debt. You cannot be in the best interest of the service authority and be a member of the Board of Supervisors. Also, the county administrator is the service authority manager and also the county administrator. Wearing dual hats, you cannot have the best interest of each entity. I'm serving the Freedom of Information Act on the county attorney. Thank you for, this concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. I want to thank everybody that came out today for public comment. Mr. Simonoff, thank you for all of your information and due diligence of everything that you dig into. We all, you bring up some very valid points, so thank you. Mr. Bushrod, thanks for coming out. Yes, it's been kind of a slow process. I hope to have something at our next meeting for you. So it's been just complicated, and you know, the wheels of government, you know how quickly they move. So we will see what we can do. Mr. Payton from the Thurman Brisbane Shelter, hopefully we can do something for them come budget season. Mr. Hunsinger, thank you. And I will address some stuff with that later on. And thanks for setting up that trash pickup for the county. And Mrs. Strauss, thank you for the email. Tuesday, the 22nd, I also attended with the rest of our board members, the first of our, hopefully not too many budget meetings. It was kind of a general overview of what's to come. We do have another one tomorrow evening if anyone is interested, and that is open to the public, so anybody can come see or listen. Saturday, the 26th, as Mrs. Kupka said, myself and her and Mr. Hunsinger helped with a Friends of the Rappahannock River cleanup, which we did on the north side of Matthias Point, where there is tons of trash. There were maybe 6 or 7 of us, I think, and we ended up picking up 40 bags of trash, 4 tires, 2 wheels, a handful of ghost crab pots, and other wonderful items. All that stuff just gets right into the Potomac, then it goes right into the bay. So it's a great thing to get all those things out of there. I also called in to attend the King George NAACP program for Black History Month. Thank you, Mr. Bushrod, for getting that all situated. It was very interesting to hear from Dr. Lucas, whose father, Dr. Curtis Harris, actually was with Martin Luther King and marched with him in numerous civil rights movements. It was very fascinating to hear her remembering of her dad. So it was very interesting. Also this week, I ended up meeting with some representatives from CNF Bank, and they unfortunately told us that they're closing the Dahlgren branch of the CNF Bank. So we are losing really our only bank in Dahlgren. The one up here in King George will remain open, so everyone can be using that up there. And going back to Senate Bill 537, you all got a copy of my email and letter from the Friends of Rappahannock. And it is a bill that's very much supported by VACO and also the entire Rappahannock River Basin Commission as well. They're all very much in favor of this bill. And I would like to get a consent from the board to sign this letter of bill that's just in support of the bill. It doesn't lock us into anything. It's just a local option, and it doesn't mandate localities to accept any of the tree ordinances. I did speak with Miss Hall, and she did say that that would be okay, and that if that did pass, that King George, we would then come up with our own version of it for our county. So I would just like to get consensus of the board to sign that letter of support and get it down to Richmond prior, or hopefully tomorrow, for their hearing on Thursday.
To be tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
I'm amenable. I'll be honest, I haven't looked at it. Based on what I'm hearing from you, though, I don't have a problem with how it sounds in regards to that. It's not actually mandating anything currently, and it would make an option open to us. What localities currently? I thought I heard that some localities currently have this available to them, and I know that's been in the past. There's been some situations where some localities are given authorization, like cigarette tax previously used to certain handful of counties. So is that accurate? Some counties currently have this opportunity. And
Mr. Hansen, can you come up here and just answer these couple of questions for him?
Currently, the tree ordinances that exist under state code. Oh, got it. Thank you. Sorry about that. I thought it was on. Currently, the tree ordinances under state code are 961 and 961.1. It's very complicated. 961 deals with the replacement of trees, so tree planting. 961.1 currently deals with the replacement or conservation of tree canopy. 961 can be adopted by any county within the Chesapeake Bay watershed, or by any county that has a population density of over 75 or 750 people per square mile. 961.1 is limited to Planning District 8 in Northern Virginia. It's an air attainment quality zone. So the legislation that is before you and before the CC&T committee basically renegotiates those two ordinances into something that is more palatable to all these sectors of Virginia, so that we may attain more and keep our tree canopy going forward. So they fundamentally rewrote the sections into a 961.3 and then 961.4. So that said, the localities that have already adopted a tree canopy ordinance, either in the Chesapeake Bay watershed or in Planning District 8, it grandfathers those in. They will not have to change their ordinances. So that has all been negotiated in the last 10 months.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, I would just pulled it up to look at it a little bit just to make sure I had put eyes on it, and that's what it sounds like to me. So I'm amenable to forwarding this on.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to read the PDF summary of the fiscal impact statement for the actual bill that we're being asked to do the letter of support for from the General Assembly website?
Go right ahead.
So the summary is, it expands to all localities provisions that currently only allow certain localities to adopt an ordinance providing for the planting and replacement of trees during the development process. The bill adds more flexibility for implementation and management of tree canopy banks, tree canopy credits, and tree canopy requirements. The bill changes and updates standards, reference documents, and published reference texts. The bill expands options for localities to disperse funds to charitable organizations. The bill adds percentage specifications for ordinances related to cemeteries. The bill removes the prohibition of invalidating local ordinances adopted before July 1, 1990, the allowance of 10-year minimum requirements for pre-1990 ordinances, and the ability to invalidate an ordinance adopted pursuant to the section relating to the replacement of trees during development process in certain localities. There's a little more information about a stakeholder advisory group, but I did do a close reading of it, and the very first line says localities may. It does not say, the first line does not say localities must or shall adopt a local ordinance. It just says localities may adopt a local ordinance to do all the stuff that they're talking about here. So I'm in favor of the letter of support.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, I have the floor.
Mr. Collins.
Mr. Hunsinger, I haven't seen you since our zoning and ordinance workshop. It's good to see you, and I'm glad to see you again come forward with this information. We discussed a little bit of that during the workshop. The tree canopy, so in King George, that's important to this community. And during our discussions with ordinances and zoning, I hope that we will be bringing up this subject matter so we can keep our tree canopy in King George in line with this bill. So, Mr. Chairman, I would be in favor of supporting this resolution.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I will get with Mr. Miller and Mrs. Lackey tomorrow and get that letter on the way down there. So thank you, Mr. Hunsinger. And that's all I have. So moving on to the consent agenda.
Move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. County officials report. Sheriff Giles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. As Sheriff of King George County, I took an oath to serve and protect the citizens. I come before you tonight to request that you adopt this resolution to support efforts to ban synthetic cannabinoid products that are endangering our citizens. Synthetic cannabinoid edible products are labeled to appeal to and entice the young. The National Institute on Drug Abuse states, synthetic cannabinoids refer to a growing number of human-made, mind-altering chemicals sprayed on dried, shredded plant materials or vaporized to produce a high. Synthetic cannabinoids are sometimes misleadingly called synthetic marijuana or fake weed because they act on the same brain cell receptors as THC, which is the mind-altering ingredient in marijuana. The effects of synthetic cannabinoids can be unpredictable and severe, or even life-threatening. The only parts of synthetic cannabinoid products that are natural are the dried plant materials. Chemical tests show that their active ingredients are human-made cannabinoid compounds. Synthetic cannabinoid users report some effects similar to those produced by marijuana, such as but not limited to elevated mood, relaxation, altered perceptions, symptoms of psychosis, and physical health problems including rapid heart rate, vomiting, violent behavior, and suicidal thoughts. Synthetic cannabinoids can be addictive. Behavioral therapies and medications have not specifically been tested for treatment of addiction to these products. Overdoses can occur and can cause toxic reactions, raised blood pressure, reduced blood supply to the heart, kidney damage, and seizures. Deaths occur when dangerous synthetic opioids such as fentanyl are added without the user knowing. For these reasons I stated, I'm asking you to adopt this resolution to support efforts to ban the synthetic cannabinoid products that are endangering our citizens. And Mr. Chair, if you like, I'd go ahead and like to read it.
Go right ahead.
It's titled Resolution to Support Efforts to Ban Synthetic Cannabinoid Products. Whereas synthetic cannabinoids are intended to mimic THC, particularly but not limited to delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, one of the main ingredients in marijuana that produces psychoactive effects. And whereas synthetic cannabinoids are not organic, but rather a chemical compound created in laboratory and are being sold as legal alternatives to marijuana. And whereas synthetic cannabinoids are dissolved in solvents in order to be applied, usually by spraying to dried plant materials or delivered through e-cigarettes or other vaping devices or edibles. And whereas synthetic cannabinoid products are packaged without information as to their health and safety risks, and the majority of synthetic cannabinoids are manufactured in Asia without quality control standards or manufacturing requirements. And whereas synthetic cannabinoids lack pharmaceutical-grade chemical purity standards and sanitary processing standards, have no accepted medical use, and have been shown to cause side effects more severe than those reported from THC. And whereas synthetic cannabinoid products are labeled to appeal to and entice youth with names such as Spice, K2, and others as a safe alternative to marijuana, and at times in packaging similar to cereal treats and candies also marketed to children. And whereas the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services has not issued regulations to govern the quality of consumable cannabinoid products manufactured outside the medical marijuana program. And whereas the Commonwealth of Virginia continues to recognize tetrahydrocannabinols other than marijuana as Scheduled I controlled substances under the Code of Virginia, Section 54.1-3446. Likewise, synthetic cannabinoids are also illegal under federal law per 21 U.S.C. Section 812 and 813. And whereas the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have determined that synthetic cannabinoids can affect brain functions, including agitation and irritability, confusion and concentration problems, hallucinations, delusions, psychosis, suicidal thoughts, violent behavior, seizures, sleeplessness, and dizziness, as well as other health problems, including breathing problems, gastrointestinal problems, heart attack, fast heart rate, high blood pressure, stroke, kidney failure, and muscle damage. And whereas it is the responsibility of the Board of Supervisors to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of King George County, Virginia, now therefore be it resolved that the King George County Board of Supervisors hereby condemns the sale of synthetic cannabinoid products in King George County and supports every effort to pass and enforce federal, state, and local laws banning the sale of synthetic cannabinoids as they contain federal, state Scheduled I controlled substances. Lack of quality control can have detrimental effects upon one's health and are marketable to the purpose appealed to the underage users. Thank you and appreciate your consideration for adopting this resolution.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you, sir.
floor. Yeah, the floor.
Sure, go ahead.
Sheriff, thank you so much for bringing this forward. This, in law enforcement, is a serious, serious problem, especially with our youth. I appreciate that you bring this before this board that is responsible for the health and safety of the citizens, and like you are also. When you touched on the mind altering, it's been my experience with these, I call it synthetic marijuana, but there's a different term that you use. The violent behavior is unbelievable. Many police officers have been shot, as you know, with people that are on these mind-altering drugs. Our young people are easy access to these things, and I applaud you for bringing this to us, and I strongly support this resolution. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions for Sheriff Giles? Okay, do we have a motion?
I move to adopt the resolution to support efforts to ban synthetic cannabinoid products as presented.
Second.
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I just want to make one comment. What distressed me the most was seeing that they look like fruit snacks. And that really distresses me because young children would not know that it was something that could really harm them. So thank you.
My only comment is I am full support of this as well. I think the three of us have dealt with folks on, or all of us have dealt with folks on these drugs. And as Mr. Collins said, the aggression and the volatility of people being shot or to fight people that are on this is, it's terrible. So I am in full support of it. So we have a motion properly seconded and we will do a roll call vote. Mrs. Bender.
Aye.
Ms. Granger.
Aye.
Ms. Kupka.
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Moving on to the report. Oh, Mrs. Hart, I'm sorry. I did see you back there and I'm reading my piece of paper. Come right up.
Good evening, board members, Mr. Miller, Mrs. Lackey. I am recommending the Board of Supervisors authorize the county administrator to transfer $1,293 from the general fund balance to the reassessment budget to provide funding for the Board of Equalization and the secretary position. As a result of additional requests to meet with the Board of Equalization to review the recent reassessments, I wanted this for 2 additional dates at the cost of $431 per day for a total of $862. Additionally, there is a need for a BOE work session that will come after all of these meetings at the cost of $431. Total funds needed for these meetings would be $1,293. We have had 12 appointments. We have seen 59 taxpayers. And I have about 30 or so to go to set up appointments. And we're going to need these 2 days.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Hart? Roger?
Yes, ma'am. It was $1,293 from the general fund to the, which fund?
Reassessment budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mrs. Bender?
And this is a question, Bob. I spoke to one of your equalization board members, and they had suggested the work session is thoughts and experiences you've had to give us some recommendations of things we might need to change or add, correct?
Well, the work session that I have mentioned here is to finalize a lot of the folks that we have met with. They need to discuss situations. Some of the taxpayers have to bring us like pictures, other information about the properties. And we have 5 commercial properties that will be discussed at this work session. We've met with those folks on the phone, and they felt that it better to have a work session because it's going to take a while.
Thank you.
Finalize those.
Thank you, Mrs. Bender. Ms.
Yes,
Kupka?
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question? This is not directly related to your request for funding this evening, but since you are here, I wanted to ask on behalf of a citizen and a taxpayer, are you, after their hearing, are you asking or requesting taxpayers to sign a form? Because Ms. Bender and I were informed that one of our constituents was asked by you personally to sign some sort of form.
Yes, it was.
Can you tell me what that is?
It was a release. I failed to get a letter in the mail for the folks. I wish I had it with me and I don't. Letting them know about the board and the process for that. And Mrs. Lackey, I brought it to her attention that I didn't get that out in time. And she came up with another writing for these folks. And she felt it important that I had them sign it. And several of them, I have emailed them to them. I've made copies for it for taxpayers when they have requested it. Some of them wanted to take it, read it, and bring it back, and I said that was fine too. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Could someone, whether that's you, ma'am, or Ms. Lackey, could someone provide all members of the board with a copy of that form, please, so we can answer our constituents' questions?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And if I may, the form is an option for folks who are ready to proceed for the Board of Equalization. There was a lack of a certain notice of documents that they could request. So it was completely at their option whether they wanted to wait out the time period in which they could request additional documents or proceed with the BOE. But I'd be happy to provide a copy.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Hart. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else with questions? No questions? Do we have a motion?
I move to transfer $1,293 from the general fund to the reassessment budget as presented.
Second.
We have a motion properly second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Mrs. Hart.
Thank you.
Moving on to report of the county attorney. Mrs. Lackey.
The first item I wanted to mention kind of dovetails with what Commissioner Hart just mentioned, which was there's been a need for some additional sittings of the Board of Equalization, which is not in and of itself a bad thing. But I wanted to bring to the board's attention that if it desired to, you can set a deadline for Board of Equalization appeals to be made. And you can also set a deadline for the Board of Equalization to complete its work. And that has various advantages, I think, both to the citizens and to the board. To the citizens, it would be a deadline that they would need to adhere to. It would have to be advertised as an ordinance, so there would be public notices prior to those deadlines being enacted. And in addition, then the board would have a full set of information on what the valuations are when you're looking to set your tax rate. So that is something that I wanted to bring to the board's attention. Yes, if it was the will of the board, I could advertise a proposed ordinance to be considered at the next meeting. Based on what the board passed for the 2010 reassessment, so in the spring of 2011, when they were looking at appeals from that reassessment, they set the deadlines as the end of March for the submitting your appeal and the end of May for appeals to be completed. Commissioner Hart's indicated there are already a few dates now of the, as she mentioned, there's additional dates of the Board of Equalization in April. So I would suggest that if you wanted to explore those deadlines, I would recommend that they be no earlier than end of April and end of May respectively.
Mrs. Hart, does that give you and the board of the BOE time, say if we did come up with something for the end of April for taking the last appeals and close of business for BOE the end of May? Okay, thank you. So does the board want to go ahead and?
Would we need to make a motion to direct staff? All right, I move to direct staff to advertise a public hearing for setting dates to complete the appeal process and the execution of the duties of the Board of Equalization as presented by Ms. Lackey.
Second.
We have a motion properly second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Mrs. Hart. Thank you, Mrs. Lackey.
And if I may, I did have one more item. In your agenda package, there is a copy of a deed of dedication, vacation and easement for Hopyard Farm, Section 17. It's not unlike a lot of deeds that you've seen in the past that deal with dedication of certain rights for utility easements to the service authority and to the county, stormwater easements to the property owners association, and then there's some additional easements having to do with emergency vehicle access and things of that nature. So I would ask for a motion allowing for staff to execute that agreement that's been reviewed both by community development staff and by me.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
I move to authorize staff to execute the Hopyard Farm Section 17 deed of dedication as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 303, presentations and reports. Mr. Beal. Thanks for coming out. Sorry it was delayed for you.
Hey, it's no problem. It's good to be here. I'm sorry I didn't sell more tickets, but glad you all stayed. I think I was last here in December, and it's first let me David Beal, Northern Neck resident engineer with VDOT. Mr. Collins, it's good to see you have a face with the name, and I look forward to working with you years to come. I was last here in December, and we've had a busy winter. I think January we had a storm every weekend, and the first storm, January 2nd and 3rd, was quite a memorable one. We got caught in that proverbial wash, rinse, repeat cycle in January and the first week of February, but we're recovering now and getting back to some good maintenance. You can see on your report, we've completed grading our non-hard surface roads, our gravel roads. As Bender, you'll see that I had Alden on upcoming, but we actually finished that today. So our gravel roads have been graded. We're back to cleaning some ditches, shoulder repair, pothole patching countywide. We fixed an erosion problem on University Drive, and we removed a tree on Salem Church. We're still working on all the debris removal from the January storm. There currently is one crew working in King George. It is a FEMA contractor. They're not state employees, but they are hired by VDOT. They're on 218 and their progress, they've started at the Stafford County line. They made it down to about Fairview, turned around and started heading back. And I think they're about halfway back. So I do anticipate two things. One, that production will increase as we move on, as they're able to find and hire more crews. And also, the second thing is that it's going to take months to get the county clean. So I appreciate your patience with that. It is a tremendous task, and I really appreciate the board and the citizens' patience on that debris. All right. We also have additional ditches on various routes. We have planned cleaning to clean, and being that it's spring, it's pothole season, so we're trying to keep up with all the potholes and get them filled. You may notice I added the pavement schedule for 2022 onto the report. We're planning to use some latex treatment on 218. We're going to use Cape Seal throughout the county, and I'll just touch a base on Cape Seal. It is a preventive maintenance measure. It's 2 steps. The first step is a chip seal. You may refer to that as like a tar and gravel that you'd see on the rural secondary roads. And then that's followed a couple weeks later by a slurry seal that goes down and fills in all the crevices and makes a nice appearance. So we get a lot of feedback on Cape Seal. Talked with the county administrator, and we're going to do a direct mailing to those subdivisions so those citizens will know what's happening in their neighborhood and kind of set the expectation. So Fox Run, Eden Estates, and Oakland Park, we're planning to do a Cape Seal in those subdivisions, as well as a small piece of, or a large piece, 2/3 of Port Conway, we're going to do Cape Seal. And then from Hop Yard to Route 3, we're going to do plant mix asphalt, which is your 1.5 inches of hot mix asphalt. The other plant mix route that's in Oakland Park, French Court, we needed to build up the pavement structure there. So there's one road in Oakland Park that's actually going to get plant mix asphalt, and the rest of it will get Cape Seal. Currently, there are a few routes in Oakland Park that aren't on the pavement schedule, and I'm working to get them added so that we'll do the entire subdivision this season. On the second page, the secondary 6-year plan. Spring is always secondary 6-year plan update time. So at the board's pleasure, I could come do a presentation in April for a planned public hearing in May, or if you'd rather, I can do a presentation the same night as a public hearing. We just need to have that secondary 6-year plan finalized by your last meeting in May, so we can work out those dates. We are planning to hard surface Rixey Road and Chestnut Hill Loop. The environmental work is done on those, and we're gearing up to get started on those soon. Prim is in the out years of the plan, although I think you'll see when we do the update that we're able to move that up, that first phase up a little bit from summer 2027. Smart Scale, we have the one project, the intersection of 206 and 218, that intersection improvement project. We'll go to add this fall. The others are still in the out years. And the other project I'll draw your attention to is the Scour Repair on 301 over Pine Hill Creek. That goes to add next month in April. And that project will contain a southbound lane closure. And I expect that lane will be closed probably from about August to December. And that's based on, the project being bid and awarded and having an acceptable contractor. That's our schedule right now, but I do anticipate approximately a 4-month lane closure while that repair is being done. That is everything on my report. I'm happy to take any questions you all may have.
Thank you. Just to start, I'd like to see here twice if you can do a presentation and for the public hearing. I don't know what everyone else wants to do, or just have them come at once.
That's what we did.
I would agree. I would, if you're available, to come beforehand, before the public hearing, to be able to speak to it. People have opportunity to digest it a little bit.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Beal?
Mr. Chair, I just have one brief question. For Eden Estates, is that both sides of the road or is it just one side?
I can give you all the routes.
I was just,
So both, Eden Drive is not in the schedule. That's the one that goes all the way through. Then there are routes on both sides of Eden Drive that are in the schedule, but there are also a bunch of roads that are private that are not in the schedule.
I was just asking about Eden because one side is in my district, so I was just wanted to know. Thank you.
I'll shoot you an email with all the routes.
Cool.
Anyone else with questions? I had a couple questions. Scour Repair, what is that?
So there's a box culvert under 301, and so that's concrete 4 sides. And as the stream transitions from concrete to natural stream bed, it just churns and it digs a hole, and we call that scour. So that hole has gotten deep enough that it's time to be repaired before it jeopardizes the integrity of the structure. So they'll go in there and armor that stream bed so it doesn't scour.
Okay, great, thanks. Other question is do we really only have one crew that's doing tree work? A FEMA crew that you said?
There's currently one crew working on 218.
So you guys, VDOT, you're not doing any of it?
No.
It's just the FEMA designated or FEMA contracted contractors?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, I haven't seen anybody yet, so I would kind of wonder where they were. And I just to put it on your radar, base is back 85% or something, I think, or
The official policy is 60% on site for all employees,
then
at least.
first,
I'm sorry, say that again.
the 31st of March, it's supposed to be.
No, that's the current policy that's set to go into play. It went into place today. There's no other change beyond that I'm aware of.
Okay. Base traffic was back. I was backed up going down there all the way back to 301 again this morning. And leaving again, it was all the way back. The area, especially down by the firehouse and stuff, there's a lot of trees and debris that's right onto the fog line or maybe even into the road. And I was concerned with base, getting back into full gear. Actually, all of 206, especially down Culpeper Creek at the bottom of the hill there, that whole section going up and down the hill, there's still a lot right to the fog line and even extending a little bit out, just to give you the heads up on that.
Yeah, I'll have somebody ride that route. We've been asked to cut it back to make sure it's off the road, but we're letting the FEMA contractor pick it up, but we want to try to mitigate any safety issues we have.
Yeah, that's definitely in the road, and like I said, it's onto the fog line. There's a number of good trees, and just with the increasing traffic on base, especially down by Company 2 and down by the rescue squad, there's a lot right there.
301.
206 Dahlgren Road. So really, it's really almost from the area of Williams Creek up to Claydale. That section is really bad. And then there's some other sections further west on Dahlgren Road. So
The district is managing this contract, and we prioritize the interstate and primary routes, and none of them are complete yet. I'm happy that we have one tree crew. I wish we had more, but it's King George and a little bit of Westmoreland is a part of that impacted our residency. But we're working to try to get it up. I think it's been estimated it's 400,000 cubic yards of debris, which I forget how many thousands of dump truck loads that is, but it's a big effort. And I did appreciate Mr. Miller's assistance working with the landfill. They had agreed to accept the debris from within King George. I don't know if we've sent any there yet, but I appreciated the willingness and the cooperation to work together to get that up.
all right, thank you. I guess the price of mulch will go down this year. I would like to see that. And what do you know about the weather coming up? Are we done with all these storms?
I hope so.
You look in your VDOT crystal ball? Okay, well, that,
We're completely restocked with salt though, so we're ready to roll. But we're hoping it doesn't happen until next year.
that's all I have. I thank you very much for coming out. And when you get set with, Mr. Miller or whatever for your presentation and all that, it'd be great. Hopefully we'll sell some more tickets for you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Miller, County Administrator report?
Okay, at the last meeting, you had all asked for a, kind of an estimated cost to do so I'm gonna jump to item number 3 first. So, at the last meeting, you all had asked for a update on what the cost would be to do a resiliency plan, a grant. We have reached out to a number of folks. The Berkeley group is one that has obviously made themselves available for this. And the cost would be about $40,000. So that would be a 25 or a 10% match. No, not 10%. We would have to pay $10,000 of that. So it'd be like a 75-25 deal. So the cost for the county would be $10,000 if you wanted to do this. We did look at the University of Virginia. They have offered their services as well. We looked into it further, and they're sending out emails to people and asking if they want to do that. And they will do some of the work, but the majority of the work falls back on the county in terms of preparing and finalizing and completing the grant. So I don't know that that's an option in terms of the time frame. And one of the things that's really guiding this is we don't have a certified floodplain manager on staff, and that is required in terms of what you do in terms of putting this grant together. So I think that's one of the overarching concerns. But you had asked for a cost, and it would be $10,000. The other thing that, and I will get with Mr. Beal, we've identified the majority of the issues that we have for resiliency projects and are things that are on VDOT right away, ditches, right off the line, culverts, that kind of stuff right off of their roads. And so we have to be very careful about, obviously if those are included in the plan, and then if you get a project, those are actually things that would not fall within the plan and couldn't then therefore get some kind of a cost sharing with the state. So it becomes like a 50-50 grant at that point. So I think we just need to be very careful, and our staff will work with Mr. Beal on this in terms of if you want us to go forward. We still have time, obviously, but the Berkeley group has indicated that that's their cost, roughly $40,000, and we'd have to pay 10,000 of it. So I will keep going then, and you can ask me questions. I didn't know if somebody had a question. At the Service Authority meeting, we going back up to the top. Service Authority meeting, we talked about a joint work session with the Board of Supervisors. We had proposed the idea of the meeting on the 15th, starting the Service Authority meeting early. But I think there were some conflicts that is spring break. And so some people wanted the flexibility of maybe not having an extra meeting. And so I think we need to look at another time. So if you all want to let me know some thoughts, I was wanting to definitely work within your time frame and what you're dealing with from a schedule standpoint of your consideration of budget proposals. And I think that, we're meeting tomorrow night on Wednesdays, and it's my understanding that historically you've always met on like the Wednesdays. And so, we can certainly keep that closed from a meeting standpoint, so that we can allow you all to have your Wednesdays to do budget activity. So think of a time, let me know. It's not a critical item. But it is obviously based on the discussions that the Service Authority and you all have had regarding the idea of a merger. And so that the next step in that process was to hold a meeting with a joint meeting of the two boards and to have a discussion at that point. Okay, so update on the Service Authority. I guess that would be my update. Obviously, the Service Authority continues to deal with issues associated with Dahlgren wastewater plant and also the Perkins Corner wastewater plant. I updated the board of directors at the earlier meeting regarding both. I can happily report that Dahlgren wastewater plant is returning to its normal operating status. The plant has pleased the efforts of our contractor in Bowdoin, and the staff has well pleased the DEQ folks, and that's a quote, well pleased. So we're very excited about the work that has been done in getting that plant back in line. Perkins Corner, long-term issues there. It is a plan. Obviously, the board has approved the CIP. The board of directors had approved the CIP to decommission Perkins. So we are starting that process. That is a 3-year process. And we will continue to operate the plant. And there have been some challenges. And as I updated the board of directors, we are working to address those challenges. And, I do believe that I provided a copy of the email that I sent to the board of directors of the Service Authority to Supervisor Granger, Chairman Stonehill, and Supervisor Collins to let them know as a courtesy of what's going on with that. Update on the Ralph Bunch building. So Ms. Kupka did allude to that. We had applied for the grant that's gonna go towards the electrical work, and we have put a letter of intent in, and then it was to be like a 30-day to 45-day process until we heard from them if we got to go to the next level in that process. And so we're anticipating hearing something soon on that. I think Ms. Kupka, characterized it accurately. We are working with an engineer on the roofing portion, dealing with the $500,000 grant. I will tell you this, that it's my understanding that there is a group that wants to do tours of the county and various attractions, and they have asked about the idea of having tours stop at the Ralph Bunch building. Our obvious concerns would be that the building is closed and the building's not in a condition that you would want to have any tours going through. And also we would obviously want whatever tour stop there to have them, far enough off of 301 that no one could be impacted by the traffic that's on 301. So I believe that they are going to be working with our Economic Development and Tourism Office on that. So exciting news for Ralph Bunch. Commonwealth budget updates. I think Ms. Kupka again alluded to the wastewater budget opportunity that we have and the fact that it's made its way and getting closer to fruition. So I think that's an outstanding achievement for this county if that ultimately comes about. I think it's good news. And much kudos to Ms. Kupka and also to Senator Stewart for his assistance and really, kind of trying to push this forward to help a real shot in the arm for the Service Authority to deal with wastewater issues. And that is it. Yeah, that's it. I'll answer any questions if there are any.
So we have time on the resilience plan. I mean, if you can get with Mr. Beal and check with him on do those two, or do our plans and VDOT right-of-ways overlap and get some more information on that and then get it to us later and
Yes.
make a decision on that.
Well, and I think that that's an important point, because if VDOT through the state is having to do similar work, then it, that kind of removes some of those other areas that we've identified, that our staff has identified. So I will talk with Mr. Beal about that.
Okay. And do we have a supervisors meeting on the 15th, right? So we were going to do a meeting prior to that.
Well, we were, but I think that the board of directors of the Service Authority has said they need to kick it around. And so I think what I had asked is that they hold off on making a decision to kind of hear from you all. So if you guys tell me a date that's really off limits, then I'll do that. I will tell you this, that we've been asked for your budget meetings, that the schools would like to come on the 23rd, because it's obviously spring break on the week of the 14th through the 18th. And so we reserved that day, that night, for mostly school stuff. And that gives them then a week to, do whatever they have to do based on your input and get it in by the 31st. So.
We need a date now.
No, not necessarily. If you want to, you just kind of everybody give it back to me later, or give me some ideas when you'd want to do it. Keeping in mind that you may be reserving your Wednesdays for budget prep. So,
Okay. Get back to you on that.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Yes.
Mr. Miller? Mr. Collins?
Yes. Mr. Miller, what was the date that they started hauling sewage from Perkins Corner to Dalburn?
So they had to, and I updated the board of directors on this. They began hauling some of that out over the weekend, the past weekend. I guess it would have been I'm trying to think. It would have been on the weekend of President's Day week. So it would have been the 19th and the 20th. They had some issues that they had to begin hauling sludge out. That was, as I explained to the board of directors, the solid levels.
Answered. Mr. Chair. He answered the question.
Okay. Mr. Collins, can you let Mr. Miller finish, please? And then when he's
I
done.
asked the question, and I didn't want any more than the answer that I
That's fine. The 19th and the 20th, and then they also hauled throughout the week of last week.
Thank you. Mr. Collins?
Second question, what date did you send the email to the board of directors notifying them that was occurring? Or any member of the board of supervisors?
So I sent that email, and you also received that email on the Friday, the 25th.
Thank you.
If I may answer that.
Go ahead.
So as I explained in the email, and as you also received, there were issues of operations, and there were issues of needing to get rid of waste so that we would not have issues of being out of compliance with the Department of Environmental Quality. And so that was why they began doing that. They then did it throughout the week, because the levels of solids in that plant, due to some operator miscalculations or inconsistencies or deficiencies of how they were performing, had the solid levels were as high as 8,000, and you're supposed to operate a plant in the 3,000 to 4,000 range. So they basically had dead sludge, dead waste that needed to get out of there, so that therefore you could begin the process of treating it in a more effective way. DQ is notified of everything that goes on there. We've had a discussion at the board of directors level. I believe that there was clarification from them about the level of input and, operationally, what they want to know in terms of these things. I will submit that the service authority hauls from Perkins at least on a regular basis 1 to 2 times a month. We also haul from other plants. We haul waste, and that's wet waste, if you will, sludge waste. We haul it to Dahlgren, and Dahlgren has a piece of equipment called a belt press, and you run it through, and it essentially then goes through what's called dewatering, and that takes the water out of the sludge. That then dries, and then it's sent to the landfill. That goes on at Perkins Corner regularly, and that goes on at all the other plants regularly. And the fact that it's being received at Dahlgren is actually a very good sign for Dahlgren, because when we were in the middle of our crisis at Dahlgren and the challenges we faced, we stopped accepting waste because we knew that that would overrun that plant. So the operations and the activities of our contractor at Perkins most likely saved additional heartbreak, I guess, if you will, or concerns for this, for the service authority. But I provided that update for the board of directors, and I provided you a copy of the memo that I provided to them, and that's my input.
Thank you. Anyone else with questions? Mrs. Kupka.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I know that Mr. Miller, you put it back on us to get back to you later, but I actually would like this board to come up with 2 proposed dates for the joint work session with the service authority, because if we do this, if we don't give him 2 dates, then the service authority board is going to meet again first before us on the 15th, and they won't know what the pleasure of this board is. And so if we can get 2 dates on paper, then the service authority at our next meeting can actually pick one, and we can set a meeting. So in the interest of moving that process forward, I was looking at Tuesdays that we don't have regular meetings. And I do realize you said the 23rd was when Dr. Benson was coming for the school budget.
That is what he prefers, yes.
So I was looking at either of the Tuesdays, the 22nd or the 29th of March.
I think that makes sense. Just to also maybe add on, I know that staff's recommendation was to hold it before the meeting, the regularly scheduled meeting. So I certainly don't mind putting those 2 forth, but then a third, if we just want to say, hey, if those don't work for the service authority, the 5th before the beginning of the service authority meeting as well, just to have another option if everyone else is amenable to that.
I can convey those options to the chair and let him direct us, if that's okay.
Mr. Collins, you have something?
You say the 5th?
That would be April 5th, yes, I guess that's your first meeting in April, yeah.
22nd or 29th?
And you can tell me the time on the 22nd and the 29th if you want to do it at 6 or you want to do it at 5:30, whatever.
I guess the question would be the earliest everyone could do, and then if service authority is like, hey, if we said 5:30 and they're like, well, 6 can't do before 6, then that'd still be fine with me. So I guess, does everyone have an earliest time that they would be available?
5:30 either on the 22nd or 29th.
Yeah, I'm amenable with that.
That works for me.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, which one is it?
Well, either the 22nd or the 29th at 5:30. Those 2 dates available for you?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Miller, thank you. If you could get with the other board and find out which one of those two dates with Mr. Morris.
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. I think that's it. And for upcoming pending appointments, anybody have any appointments or anything?
Mr. Chair, I do have one for our workshop tomorrow for the Budget Committee. Would that be okay if I can make that one right now?
Sure.
So I just got confirmation from the person they can do it.
Okay, great.
I would like to nominate Mr. Isaac Hughes to our Board of Supervisors Budget Committee.
Second.
We have a motion properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have 3 appointments, please.
Okay, Mr. Collins?
Like to appoint Ms. Buck to the Parks and Rec Committee, Mr. Booth to the EDA Committee, and Ms. Thompson to the Budget Work Citizen Advisory Committee for budget.
Would you mind making a motion for each one individually?
I'd like to make a motion for Ms. Buck be appointed to the Parks and Recreation Committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
I can make a motion to appoint Mr. Booth to the EDA.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
I'd like to make an appointment to Ms. Thompson to the Budget Advisory Committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Could I just ask, I'm not sure if you know, but would you mind passing their contact information on to staff so they can reach out to them to make sure that they get on the meetings properly?
Yeah, especially Mr. Thompson and,
It's Miss Thompson,
oh, sorry.
and she's currently on, I believe. Yes.
And then Mr. Hayes, get his information so they can get contacted for tomorrow. Okay, great. If that's it, do we have a motion?
I move that the King George County Board of Supervisors convene in closed meeting to discuss the potential acquisition of real property for the purpose of fire and rescue facilities pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A3 and 6. These provisions permit discussions concerning considerations of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiation strategy of the public body. And discussion or consideration of the investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, where, if made public initially, the financial interest of the governmental unit would be adversely affected. I invite the county administrator, county attorney, and fire chief because they are deemed necessary and/or their presence will reasonably aid the board in its consideration of topics to be discussed pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3712F.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are in closed session.
I move that the King George County Board of Supervisors return to public meeting and certify by vote that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered during the closed meeting.
Second.
We have a motion properly second. We can certify by vote, please.
So certify.
So certify.
So certify.
Certify.
Chair votes so certified. We are back in session. Do we have a motion?
It's 15th, right?
Tomorrow?
No, it's tomorrow, you're right. I move to adjourn until Wednesday, March 2nd at 5:30 in the boardroom.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are adjourned.